culture is all about communicating, right? Culture is about communicating through words, through behaviors, right? Through setting up the right sort of systems, right? Like for example, you know, if you want to build a trust-based culture, right? Simple things like how do you file expenses, uh, can be demonstrative. That how many layers of clearance you have to go through, how many bills you have to submit to get your expenses cleared, right? If it's a trust-based system, they say, okay, every day you can spend this much. We don't care. You don't need to give the bills, right? We expense you, and of course, once we randomly audit, if anything is found wrong, then stricter actions is going to be taken, right? So that is trust-based. Otherwise, okay, we have no trust in you. Just file everything. File petrol bills also, file food bills also. This, that, right? So it's about, and all this is communication, uh,
Yeah.
uh, in a way, right? So everything that you do, and that's one of the difficulties of being a leader, that you are being constantly watched, not only what you are saying, but what you are doing and how you are behaving, right? And you have to hold yourself to the highest of standards in all of these matters, because otherwise, all these talks of transparency, culture, communication, all these sort of break down, right? So yes, it's important, but not just in words, but also in action.
Awesome.
I can relate to this like so much, right? In terms of what you're just saying, Gaurav, because I was like 22 years old when I started working. I had a team of 55 people who were on average twice my age, who reported, right? And it was harrowing, right? Because people would look at you at all points of time. If you came into the shop floor one morning and you were not smiling and you were not upbeat and energetic, you would bring down the entire energy of the all, right? People would think today is a light day. आज मैनेजर चिल ले रहे हैं, हम भी चिल ले सकते हैं. आज प्रोडक्शन कम होगा तो चलेगा. And even smaller things, like you walk past the shop floor, you see a piece of scrap lying on the ground. If you don't pick it up, the shop floor is going to become a dustbin a week later, because like अरे manager ने कचरा नहीं pick किया, तो हम क्यों करें? It is, so it's something that I resonate with a lot. That I think, what you were saying at the very beginning, that culture is ultimately is the set of behaviors and practices that management considers to be acceptable, right? At the end of the day, I think one of the examples I think about a lot, and I remember my then plant manager at PNG, Manu Mahajan, always talked about, was Indigo, right? That what is it that Indigo incentivizes? Okay, things have changed today, maybe it's not the same, but what is it that Indigo incentivizes, right? It was all of the small individual behaviors. How fast are you unloading baggage? How fast are you turning the vehicle around, right? For the person who's cleaning the seats, right? Once the vehicle has landed, how fast are you getting the cleaning job, right? So that focus on speed was just a part of everybody's KPI at all different levels. And, that's something that definitely resonates. One of the other things I wanted to understand is, maybe when you're a small company and you're still growing, you can move fast, you can break things, you'll have churn in an organization, attrition is to be expected. The org will outgrow people at times, right? And then there are early stage folks, there are growth stage folks. People will want to leave saying, hey, now the org's become too large. This is no longer interesting. I'm a 0 to 1%. And then somebody else will come in who'll say, hey, I'm a 1 to 10%. I wasn't right for 0 to 1 anyways. I'd like a little bit of more structure to work with. But as you scale, as you grow, attrition becomes important, right? You don't want to be known as a place where people are churning out constantly, because then you will have trouble hiring the best talent. So would you talk to us a little bit, about how do you think about retention, right? Which also becomes the next important part after hiring and enablement, and rewards recognition, especially in slightly larger organizations where you're dealing with a large number of staff, right? Who are not necessarily part of leadership. Is R&R important, right? Or is it just a bloated big company thing? Or is it something that even startups and growth stage companies need to prioritize and think about? So how do you think about retention? How do you think about R&R? Does it play a role in making your org successful? Would love to hear your perspective there.
Sure. So see, I think R&R is important, right? I don't think it's the most important thing, right? Uh, because the risk is that you end up making a lot of good behavior very transactional, right? If you start incentivizing people on, on, as it like basic behavior, and maybe who knows, you took example of Indigo, and that is what has happened now. Who knows? Because it used to be great, not anymore. Because if you are trying to incentivize every single thing, that I will give you 10 rupees for this and 20 rupees for this and 30 rupees for this, then you essentially just lose sight of the larger goal, and keep optimizing for yourself, and don't even think about how your actions might be affecting the overall value chain. And are you doing it in a way that also helps the people who have to do their job after you or before you or whatever. And so it just breaks the link, right? So yes, like for example, I believe that ESOPs have to be universal, right? It should not be just for very few top people, but across the organization, so that when uh, wealth actually comes, wealth creation happens, the benefits trickle down to everyone, right? And people are in it for the right reason, and people are in it for the long term, right? So for me, R&R philosophy is just keep it very, very simple. Keep it very, easy to understand and communicate, right? Because, it's like, for example, you are part of a loyalty program, right? And if you just don't understand it, right? What is the point? And people do that okay, X% on grocery, Y% on food, Z% on this. Who remembers that? Yeah? Right. So similarly, R&R, right? For loyalty program to work, why Jet Privilege, I believe, was the best loyalty program, because first the flights were great. You try putting Jet Privilege on a third class airline, the loyalty program has no meaning, right? So first, for R&R to have meaning, first your the culture, the company, all that has to first fall in place. Then how simple and meaningful that is, right? That it is really going to change people's lives when it sort of comes into effect, and just leave it at that. And that's why, again, it comes down to, it's important that you have people in the organization who care about the mission and not about how much incentive or how much money they're going to make. Because reward is improbable, and you don't know when it's going to come to you, but the pain is deterministic, frequent, and almost daily. Right? So and that is what you need to solve for, more than R&R. And what you see is, because it is not easy to do, right? People resort to all these random R&R policies just to kind of keep the morale high, but that's, I believe, is a losing game all the time.
Understood. Got it. Thank you so much. We've sort of covered, I think, the first very important segment, right, which is on the conceptual and operational aspects of hiring, of building teams, of implementing culture. Moving to the second part, that people sort of wanted to understand, and which, in my experience, has been one of the most important aspects of the great leaders I've worked with, are the soft skills, right? It's about being mature, about being empathetic, especially in ops, where you might be managing people who are either older to you at an early career, or just managing a lot of people, right, who come from different backgrounds, have different perspectives, different incentives. I think the first question, right, and this is a question that I think everybody has asked at some or the other point of time. As a new manager, as a new leader in an organization, how do you get buy-in? How do you earn trust? How do you build respect, right? Because you can't just step into a role. Sure, there's the authority aspect of it. Hey, you report to me, so I'm telling you, you do something. But that's transactional in a way. It's not going to work for a very long time, right? I mean, your own ability to rise in an organization, your ability to deliver your own metrics is going to be very limited to that perspective. So, in a meaningful aspect, right? You're a new person, you have people to manage, you have a team to manage at different levels, different capabilities, different competencies, education, background, whatever it may be, right? How do you get buy-in? How do you build trust? And how do you sort of earn, respect in an organization? Would love to hear your point of view. And if there's an example here that can be played back to the audience, it would be awesome. Given that you've been a new manager or a new leader in so many different organizations at different stages of their journey.
Sure. So see, it's very simple again, that manager itself, boss, it's a very very alien concept, right? In overall scheme of things, and in how nature has evolved, right? So nature has caregivers, who are your parents, and parental love, for example, is across species, then and then of course, we as humans have put in all these systems in place, for whatever reason. But the fundamental thing is that nobody in their right minds, I think, likes a manager or a boss, so it is automatically a very difficult position to be in, because who likes authority, unnecessary authority, right? So, if the worst thing that you can do is you step into a new role and you say, okay, I'm the boss, right? I know everything. I'm going to tell you what to do. Okay. And if you're not going to do that, there'll be repercussions, right? Just absolutely stupid rookie move, right? I think what people are looking for, fundamentally, people are looking for somebody to come in and help them grow, help them remove obstacles, that are in their path of growth or whatever they are trying to do, right? And I think that is where you need to be starting from. That you go in, you really understand the problems, right? Because this whole thing about, don't bring me problems, bring me solutions, right? So now nobody brings their problems, and the problems remain unsolved because they themselves are struggling with the solution, right? So they don't have the solution, they will also not tell you the problem, right? And so you really need to understand the problems, right? And there is a very high probability that you will also not have the solution, because you have not spent that much time and energy on the problem as the concerned person might have had, right? But you need to then work with them to be able to solve that problem in whatever way possible, right? And it doesn't matter what the result is going to come from. Whatever the result is, right? Whether you solve the problem, whether you get stuck with it, whether you give up, whatever. But when you kind of go through that journey together, right, there is this inherent trust that builds in the relationship, right? And essentially, uh, what is culture? Another definition of culture is this scaling of trust, right? That people just trust that you will do the right thing for what is needed, and then they will do the right thing for what is needed, right? So for a new manager, I think just it's of course a lot of ego boost, that you have a span, and so many people report to you and all that. But I think the moment you realize that uh, it's a great responsibility, right? And the weight of that responsibility, when you start feeling that on your back, you know that's when you say that, okay, uh, how do I how am I able to do a better job at it? And that can only be when I'm able to take these people along, that they can trust me, and I'm sort of I'm an enabler for them, and not a monitor, right? That's the distinction, right? And if you are operating from an enabler mindset, I think things become fairly easy, right? And if you start operating from a monitor mindset, things will become incredibly hard, right? So yeah.
This is brilliant, because I had a parallel question which I don't need to ask anymore, because I think you've answered both in one go, which was this exact aspect, right? That people are often worried, right, about putting employees, junior subordinates forward, right? Knowledge is often protected, right? You operate with a scarcity mindset with your team at times, rather than an enabler mindset, and I think you've just hit that point right on the head. If you have to tell people you're the boss, you're not the boss, right? Is probably the simplest way to think about it. And it's not like the org which needs to live up to you, it's you who needs to live up to the org, at least in your early days, before you can start asking for things from people, to sort of live by example and walk the walk, so as to speak, do things, spend time with the organization. And I resonate with this like incredibly.